unstoppable, do the impossible. I'm irresponsible, yet I'm phenomenal. I got an arsenal, I'm dropping bombs, you know. No one can stop me, to the top, here I go, think I'm chosen to be the king of rock, think the people have spoken. I can hear the tick-tock of the clock, I'm in motion. So now I'm gonna pop, causing all this commotion.
Yeah, sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable. Yeah, ready to go, man, lock and load. That's right, I swear to God that I could drop you, bro. Yeah, I got a shot and I ain't stopping, no. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable.
Yeah, let's go. I don't care what they all say. That's right, I'ma do this thing my way. Let's go. Been grinding hard on it all day. Okay, we work hard, then we all play. Yeah, I'm addicted to the grind, man. That's right, so I refuse to waste time, man. Yeah, one day it all will be fine, man. Let's go. Gotta commit to the climb, you know, man. We're back with the Guinness, setting records every minute, every track. In addition to the fact that we're winning, still we lack something's missing. Need a track that is hitting, making racks, making millions. Oh, yeah. Rap, that's the mission. I don't waste time, no, I make time. All these people wanna hate, fine, I'ma make mine. While you sitting there complaining, I'll be training. While you sitting there just waiting, I'm creating.
Yeah, sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable. Yeah, ready to go, man, lock and load. That's right, I swear to God that I could drop you, bro. Yeah, I got a shot and I ain't stopping, no. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable. got it all wrong. We just gotta hold on and on and on and on. I think they got it. Take a look around me, taking pages from a magazine. Been looking for the answer ever since we were 17. You know the truth can be a weapon to fight this world of ill intentions. A new answer to the same question. How many times will you learn the same lesson? Got it all wrong. We just gotta hold on and on and on and on. 'Cause we're gonna be legends. Gonna get their attention. What we're doing here ain't just scary. It's about to be legendary. Yeah, we're gonna be legendary. Yeah, we're gonna be legendary. Take a look around me, taking pages from a magazine, looking for the answer ever since we were 17. 'Cause we're gonna be legends, we're gonna get their attention. What we're doing here ain't just scary, it's about to be legendary. Yeah, we're gonna be legends, gonna teach them all a lesson. Got this feeling in our souls we carry, it's about to be legendary. This is what we came for, couldn't want it anymore. Never turn back now, got to leave it all on the floor. Been dreaming of the payoff, the struggle and the trade-off. Fighting tooth and nail on the way up. Tell them the truth, but they think it's just made up. They were gonna be legends. 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 We're gonna be legends.
What up, guys? Chris with Croft CNC here. We've got a last minute, very special guest with us. We have one of our active duty members of the armed forces with us that is also a woodworker, a furniture maker, and he's building up his CNC repertoire, is what we'll say. So today we have Dan on with us. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him, let him introduce himself, his business, what he does, and what he's hoping to accomplish with his CNC. And then we're going to just shoot from the hip as far as questions he might have for me, questions I have for him, and overall kind of what some stumbling blocks are that he overcame in the CNC world coming from a hand craftsman. Okay, so we're going to have Dan unmute his mic and go ahead and start talking. And let's see. There we go. There's that. Let's do
Hey, Chris, good morning.
What's up, man?
Another day. I had to go get me a cup of coffee real quick.
I heard that. What are you drinking this morning?
A PX special, or excuse me, a commissary special, some knockoff coffee, but hey,
Okay.
it's cheap and it works.
Hey, as long as you get the caffeine in you, that's all that matters. I got my Croft CNC powder coated cup, and it is almost empty, but I am drinking Bones and Barrel caramel apple coffee this morning with a little bit of honey in it.
See, when I go buy the coffee, I go buy Death Wish. She buys cheap. So
see, I like Death Wish. I do Death Wish's ornaments and stuff, but
nice.
Whenever I run out, I'm not paying $20 a bag for it because I go through it so fast. I'll go through a bag a day.
See, I pay a little bit more than that because I buy the little K-cup things. I need to get me reusable cups, but
man,
Dre King turned me on a Black Rifle. It's a good coffee.
Are you doing Black Rifle or Death Wish?
Or excuse me, Death Wish. That's what I meant to say.
I was going to say I do Black Rifle stuff too.
I haven't tried. I think I tried Black Rifle coffee when I was in Afghanistan, but
probably.
Yeah, they kept sending somehow or other boxes that just magically kept appearing. And coffee is coffee over there.
Well, they're all veterans. It's all veteran or active duty people there. Charlie and the guys over there. Matt Best is a very big.
That man puts out some funny videos.
Oh yeah. Seth actually does Iron Bean coffee, which I just found out about them. I can't wait. I'm gonna get some on order. If anybody out there wants to send a bag to try out, we'll do a review on it on Coffee and Klutz. But this one that I'm drinking right now, my wife actually got me for Valentine's Day. She got me a 3-pack. There's a bourbon whiskey aged bean, and it literally tastes like you took a shot of bourbon and poured it into the coffee. Like it's that strong of aging.
I mean, you're speaking my kind of language right there.
Right. And then she did the caramel apple. Oh, and red velvet cake.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah. And all three of them, you have to like bourbon in your coffee, which everybody knows I do. So whenever
on the weekends, I'm with you, but I typically fly every day. So during the week, I can't really do that.
That's a great segue. What do you do on both fronts of your life?
In the Army, I am active duty. I'm an active duty staff sergeant. Before here in Alabama, I used to fix the Chinooks and actually crew the backside of them, and I teach young enlisted crew members how to work on aircraft. I teach them how to get inside of aircraft, do cargo loading, and shoot guns outside of that thing.
Right on. Yo, so Seth wants to donate a pound of rage if we're willing to do a review. So I'm down, Seth.
go.
You drop it off, I'll brew it, I'll grind it, I'll brew it, and we'll try it.
Hell yeah.
So you are active duty right now, but you are stateside. You have been deployed.
I've got multiple combat deployments between Iraq and Afghanistan. I've got a couple. I did one to Liberia for the Ebola outbreak, and I've done a couple other things.
That's really admirable, and thank you for your service on behalf of all of my viewership. You guys do stuff that allows us to do this today. So thank you very much.
So what I do now, outside of the Army, back in Hawaii about 8 or 9 years ago, a friend of mine got me started because I did construction before the military. But he was like, "Hey, let's start making some furniture and see if we can drum up some cash because Hawaii is fairly expensive to live in." So we started, and I mean, it just blew up from there.
Right.
We PCS in different directions. I'm not sure if he's still making furniture, but I've been doing the furniture side for approximately 8 or 9 years now.
Okay.
What led me into CNC was my father's friend owns a steel shop in about middle Alabama, and they gave me one of the torn and tattered American flags and a nice, cool little Georgia Bulldog that they had CNC milled out of steel.
Okay.
And I was like, this is cool. And I was thinking about, well, with all the hardwood that I throw away, but just, I mean, I'm in a single car garage. I live on a military installation. I was like, I could turn this into something instead of putting it in the trash or burning it.
Right.
So I initially, not knowing nothing at all about CNC, shot from the hip, which is not a good thing to do, but I did. And I purchased an X carve.
Right.
And that was an interesting
Okay.
With the X carve, obviously, you have the rigidity issues. You have the wasteboard warping. You have the belt slipping. You have belt stretch, belt tension. I ended up buying a lot of stuff from Luke when I first started to try to make the machine better because I didn't realize, I guess, that it was a hobby machine.
Right.
I incorporated it in my shop to be able to do production work.
Right.
So we made that work for a while. I bought CNC for newbies Z-axis for it. I bought bigger stepper motors, things, and just better bits after I learned what I was doing.
Okay.
I ended up with Vetric. Vetric was a game changer. Vetric took me from easel, which was very frustrating and confusing, to something that was understandable and usable, in my personal opinion. And I believe you helped me set my Vetric up, if I'm not mistaken.
I may have.
Yeah, you did, because I had no clue what I was doing. Since I learned about the issues with the X-Carve, I really wanted linear driven, and I wanted just a stronger machine because eventually I want to mill cabinet doors. I mean, I'm a furniture guy. Like a lot of you guys pour your hearts and soul into CNC and y'all create some beautiful, beautiful things. But again, to me, it's another tool in my shop.
Let me stop you there. That is a great observation. Is everybody thinks because you have a CNC, you press a button and it magically appears and it's all done for you.
No.
And you're absolutely right on the fact that it is just another tool, and you have to learn how to use the tool properly and appropriately.
This is true. So Inventables is great at marketing. They're like, oh, you're going to make thousands of dollars this thing. Once you learn how to use it, I can attest that, yes, you can make quite a bit of money with it.
Right.
It is one step in the final product. I mean, most of my wood comes rough cut, as you see this oak against the wall back here.
Yep.
So it's got to be jointed. It's got to be planed. I mean, you can do planing or surfacing on the CNC machine. But in the interest of time, sometimes when you have a bigger piece, it's a lot easier to send it through the planer, as long as your planer is adjusted correctly, and then lay it on the machine and go from there. Bigger pieces, i.e., I do a lot of plaques because I'm down here at Fort Rucker. We have a class that graduates, hell, sometimes 2 classes a week, every week.
Right.
So smaller stuff, I'll get edge glues panels, or if they want hardwoods, I'll glue them together and then I'll surface it on the CNC machine. That's what bought my CNC for newbies machine, because currently the X carb, I got to get the tiling, and everybody keeps telling me that, but I needed a machine that I could throw a cabinet door on and cut without having to deal with moving pieces around, because while the CNC machine is working, I'm over here on these tools building dog kennels or whatever it may be.
Right. And that's one of the added advantages of having a CNC machine. A lot of the stuff that you do on a CNC machine, you can do by hand.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can actually do faster by hand.
Oh, absolutely.
But you can make 5,000 pieces exactly the same, or you just sit there and say, hey, I'm making this on the CNC while I'm doing another operation.
And that's typically the way I do business. Most of the time, I'll have plaque orders. And I mean, a lot of guys do flags, and Dre King does really great flags.
Mm-hmm.
Down here in Lower Alabama, this market's fairly saturated with flags.
Yeah, the Southern boys really, that's kind of where it took off, what was south of the Mason-Dixon and east of the Mississippi.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
you go west of the Mississippi, and I'm telling you, I could retire. Literally, I'm looking at the stuff people are doing out there, and they're not even scratching the surface. They're like, I do all my stars by hand with a Dremel, and I'm like, that's fantastic for you if you want to hand carve plaque.
If you got that kind of time, but I'm a businessman. At the end of the day, I got to turn money.
Exactly. And I can turn out, for me alone, if I just did a set of flags a day, I could probably turn out 10 full flags a day.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. The single piece flags, I mean, like the things I'm doing, like the single piece flags. I mean, you throw that on the CNC, you surface it, you stain it, and you press. Dude, you already have your file set. Hit start, and I walk over here and make other money. Well, that's my money.
Right.
And while I typically don't make flags, I do make them for like PCS gifts, which is when we changed stations or whatnot for my battalion. Because I mean, at the end of the day, we all have to pass the hat around to collect up donations to pay for these gifts. The Army doesn't pay for it. It's not really a thing. I don't even sure what we're supposed to be doing, but we do it anyway.
Right.
So part of my thought process on this was when I first got down here and seeing how many people move all the time from this location in the classes, or how many people go to classes here, I was like, let me see if I can come up with a more affordable option.
Right.
And I'm not going to lie, like my 2x3 flags, I usually sell those to my battalion for maybe $80.
Right.
I'm not making much on them. Like, it's enough to keep the CNC machine running. That's really all that matters, as long as the tool's working.
Yeah. And it's building your portfolio at the same time.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. I mean, Jay from J-Tech Photonics has been extremely amazing through this process. Like,
he's been a guest on here.
He's helped me learn some things that aren't necessarily advertised on his website and how to use my laser, because my mind goes, all right, cool, I want to do this. And he's like, all right, cool, well, kind of limited by the shroud. You're kind of limited by, okay, how do we make it work?
Yep.
I mean, being an aviation mechanic, there's an answer to everything. You just got to know what you want.
My shroud, it was a happy accident that my shroud ran into the side of a piece of wood. I post-processed with the Gerbil post-processor instead of the J-Tech post-processor, and the Z movement, it actually moved down.
Ooh.
And off to the side of the wood, and whenever it came over, it smashed the shroud. Now, my laser on my X-Carve and on my CNC for newbies machines are in a one-car garage that I usually set it and forget it and go powder coat or something. So I basically just left the shroud shattered and off, and then I press play, do my thing, come back, and it's done. So I don't have to worry about laser beams bopping around.
I mean, I was lasering. So the Army aviation emblem or the Army crew member wings or pilot wings, a lot of people like me to make those and then put guys' names on them.
Yep.
And luckily, I figured out a way because you're supposed to be an 1/8 inch off. You could change your focal point, but you're supposed to be an 1/8 inch off.
Right.
Jay helped me overcome some obstacles with when you got an inch thick at this end and a 1/4 inch thick at this end. How are you supposed to laser that?
Right.
And he helped me overcome some of that. Like there's some ways around it.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you right now, a lot of it, I've already, now I do stave flags.
Yeah.
So I do full boards. I don't do a one-piece union. I don't do single flags, like single board flags. All of mine are staved. And then I actually carve into the stave the union and laser etch the designs on the stripes. So whenever I do it, my stuff can be, like you said, it can be off an inch on this end and a half inch this end. And we're like, okay, what do we do? And my thing is I actually go an 1/8 inch off the highest point, and then as it goes through, I'll typically let it run.
It's really not that bad to let it run a little high.
Yeah,
it still burns fairly nicely.
Yeah, and then
I did one like that in the shape of the United States, like individual stripes all stained, and that I had an Apache class want me to burn an Apache on it.
Right.
What do? You figure it out.
I think that was one of the SVGs that I helped with.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
I was early in my laser days.
Yeah. It's awesome to see. I didn't realize how early you and I connected in your process of CNC and lasering.
Oh yeah, literally, bro. I was like 2 months in, if that.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So that was really cool.
I spent about a month in this garage before I realized, oh crap, there's Facebook groups for this. Oh crap, there's other people I can like ask help from.
Right.
I went ugly early. My first thing I wanted to do was 3-dimensional. I didn't really care about making flash because again, that market's saturated.
Right.
So I learned how to do the 3-dimensional stuff, and then guys started asking me for 2-dimensional stuff, more detailed graphics, and that's when I started asking you, like, hey, how do I do this exactly? Because 3-dimensional is fairly easy.
I forget how I even hooked up with you. I think maybe Dre said, hey, I've got a buddy that needs some help. Can I give him your name or something?
Yeah, probably so. Dre is like the ultimate connect man.
Yeah.
If there's an answer he doesn't know, he will call me or he'll call you. Or I had people randomly call me, hey, Dre King told me to talk to you. I was like, what you do, brother? So the journey currently right now is I'm partially through assembly of a new carve. Okay. I was, again, trying to be cost effective. I only purchased their X-Carve new carve upgrade.
Right.
I eventually was planning on using my X-Carve wasteboard and got past that real quick. Like I bought 2040 extrusion just like they use. And I already had the Masumi extrusions from my wasteboard for my X-Carve.
Right.
So I just yarded all that off of there and built the base frame already. Last couple of days, I've been exploring the spindle world.
Okay.
So my issue last night, you were trying to help me through about getting the spindle to spin from the pick center codes.
Right.
Yeah. So lessons learned, good guys. If you take some crap apart, you might want to put it back together correctly.
The right way.
Yes. So
what happened? We're literally hearing about this for the first time this morning because it was late at night. I obviously crashed out as I always do. So
initially, getting the spindle or the VFD to even show that it was spin, it would actually send power out like their videos show to do. The Amazon video says type in this PD code, type in this PD code. I did all that. I got no display of power coming out or hertz coming out or anything as the video says it shows it's supposed to. So you were helping me with it. I was kind of freaking out a little bit because I'm trying to get everything up and running by this weekend.
Right.
I ended up hopping on YouTube, and there was a guy who had a much larger CNC than any of ours, and he was working through a VFD issue. And DJ, I forget his last name. He's got a really good write-up on the CNC for Newbies page.
Okay.
How he set his VFD up. In his write-up, PD003 says 0. And what I ended up changing was PD003 to 400.
So you had no base frequency 0.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And again,
I thought we talked about that, and you said, yeah, it was 0.
No, I'm saying this is when I was initially just trying to get it to run.
Okay.
Last night, what I figured out after I installed it, you were trying to help me run it through the computer.
Right.
So you know how Phil put out the new case for the Adreno cover and the Demon Shield?
Yep.
The one I bought from you did not necessarily have that. So I was like, cool.
Right.
My buddy 3D printed it for me. I took the stuff apart, put it in there. Everything seemed like it was golden. Well, note to self, guys. You can have that Demon Shield one pin over too far when you drop it down in the Adreno. So remember last night you were saying, well, something can't be right with the settings. I verified all the settings again. Right. And me being an aircraft mechanic, typically when we turn on a switch and something doesn't work down here, I told you, I was like, hey, I'm going to check continuity because something's not making sense here.
Right.
Because when I built all this stuff and set it up to start with, I had continuity everywhere. It was perfect.
Right.
I hadn't checked it since I put that little case on the Demon controller.
Okay.
So I started getting an intermittent beep, 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 beep on the negative side on my PMW switch. I was like, all right, that's not right. So I chased it. I went from the VFD up to my control box. Same thing. I thought it was my double pole, double throw switch. So I was like, cool, let's eliminate that from the situation. I made some jumpers, still kept getting it. Came all the way down to the Demon controller. And I kept intermittently getting grounding. I was like, what is going on here? So I started straight to the Demon Shield. And then I pulled up Phil's, he's got a webpage that shows you like the Adreno board where all the pins and everything goes to.
Right.
And my first thought process, if I'm getting intermittent grounding, I don't have something plugged in correctly.
Exactly.
So I literally unhooked all my wires, pulled the Demon Shield up off the Adreno, and I was like, is it possible that I put it in the wrong, like one pin over, too far left or too far back? And bigger than hell. That's exactly what it was.
Man.
As soon as I plugged, as soon as I put it back together correctly, plugged everything in, I came up when I was running those N3 commands that you were telling me about.
Yep.
Started spinning. The little NAMI thing on the VFD still don't work, but I can do it from the computer. That's all I care.
Right. Well, part of that could be your PDO1 or your PDO2 systems based off of a potentiometer.
Yeah, and I thought about looking into that some more today, but at the end of the day, like,
yo, our Nubian King is on.
Hey, Dre, sexual chocolate, girl.
Sexual chocolate.
But a lot of guys buy the 220 volt spindles and the 220 volt VFDs. Right. I live in military housing, so I really can't run that. I have one 220 plug, so I bought the 110 2.2 kW. And
that's the one that I have, but my situation is a little different because I'm still running routers and I have this spindle. I spent the money on it to do a review on it, but I chose a different VFD than everybody else. It's an all digital VFD, like no potentiometer knob or anything. And I have yet to install one of those. So I'm like, I'm very scared to install it. And I'm half tempted just to sell it off and buy one of the ones that I know. But I'm like, nobody's done a review on this. So
yeah, you know how it goes. If you don't step outside the comfort level, there's no learning there.
Right. But there's also I just got the CNC for noobs. I didn't blow up the Gecko because I don't have money to replace it. And I don't want a dead machine sitting here taking up room.
Just take
It's
precautions.
yeah, I know. I should just do it. I've had a lot of guys just tell me, just do it. Just hop in and do it. You know you're gonna get it. And I'm like, no, you guys don't understand. I really don't know that I'm gonna do it.
I mean, realistically, there's in the CNC for newbies forums, because I typically use that more now since I bought a CNC for newbies machine.
Right.
I would say the XCarve forums versus the CNC for newbies forums. The CNC for newbies forums are a lot more in depth. I think realistically, if you're in that group, it seems like there's the assumption that and you know somewhat of the basics at this point in time. Versus the XCarve, there's a lot of like brand new questions, which I understand. A lot of guys who just getting into the community buy XCarves. I did it. The CNC for newbies forums, it seems like there's a lot more technical data there.
Oh, absolutely. I will give you that 110%. Typically, like my go-to pages for XCarve are the XCarve users group, the XCarve owners group, and then my main one that I post on is everything XCarve.
Yeah, everything XCarve helped me a lot when I first started.
Right. And that's kind of, and it's nothing against the other ones. It's just for some reason when I was in my old shop, I hopped on and I started doing lives on it, and I got a lot more interaction. So I started doing more and more lives on it. And then I just kind of, everybody was like, oh, Chris is doing a live on it. So it kind of became my home there.
So one thing I will say is Bob Canning on our forum, I think he's on damn near every one of the forums.
Right.
That is an extremely intelligent man. A lot of people see his sarcasm and call him an asshole and this, that, and the other thing. If you read what he writes and then you cross-reference, like what I do is I cross-reference with the Spindle manual, and 99% of stuff that dude says is spot on.
I'll tell you him. There are really so many good CNC guys on these groups. Him, Phil Johnson, there's Bob Canning, and then we call him Bob and Bob.
Yeah, Bob Joel.
Bob Joel.
Yeah.
And you've got great veteran guys like Kyle Ely and Lawrence Kelly. I think it's Lawrence Kelly is his last name.
Yeah, I've seen his name a few times.
Those guys know Vetric. There's Michael. He knows Vetric really. He was actually at the forefront beta testing the original Vetric stuff. He's been using Vetric since they started it, I think. But it's guys like that, and they're on these groups, and people don't realize like they're a value additive to every group that they're a part of.
Oh yes, 24/7 tech support.
Right. And people, they're like, oh well, this guy is he's really sarcastic, and I can understand that.
I can too. You asked the same question for the 1,000th time. I mean, I could understand that.
Right. So it's just one of those things where you're like, yeah, and I've listened, Bob and Bob have given me, they've given me shit, and I'm just like, cool. Like I can take a punch to the face like anybody else. So your words don't freaking hurt me.
Yeah, but, I mean, I guess what I was more leaning towards is they do put out really good information. You just gotta read through the sarcasm.
Right.
And right. I noticed a lot of people seem to take that like to heart. I'm like, come on, guy. You came to the internet, like especially in the CNC for newbies group. They're smart asses in that group, which is hilarious.
Right. Sometimes it's right there in front of you, and they're trying to let you solve the problem yourself so you feel accomplished.
Well, part of it too is if you always give me the answers, I never learn.
Right.
At the end of the day, this has been for the last year and a half. This has been one hell of a learning process, and without being given all the answers, That's what helped me understand.
Right.
Because I know it 9 times out of 10, I can call you and say, hey, what's this? And because you're probably doing something, you're saying, hey, check, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Well, last night, I would have, if you'd have told me, hey, go to the Arduino, I'd have never figured that out, like on my own, without just sitting there messing with it for as long as I did.
I can tell you it would have been, I don't know how long it would have taken me to say go to the Arduino, because that was one of the first things, and you're like, yeah, I got that hooked up right.
Well, when I said I got it hooked up, right, I'm thinking cableage in. I didn't think about demon shield aligned to the Arduino.
Right.
Again, I am lucky to the point where I do have an extensive aviation background as far as wiring and mechanics and being a fly on the same thing I work on. Like, you've had this discussion many times. There's a lot of guys out there who don't have that.
Right.
And this is a craft. And you only get good by making your mistakes and learning from them.
You got that right. And
I tell Dre all the time,
they hurt.
I tell Dre all the time, it's not about the mistake, it's the recovery and what you learn from it.
Yep.
Because you can make mistakes. I mean, it costs you a piece of wood. It happens.
Yep. Or just in general, more so than the piece of wood or something, you've got an X-Carve is much cheaper to put together than a CNC for newbies.
And I'm going to agree to disagree with you there. So
okay.
When we talked through me and what my next step was, so if I could go back a year and a half ago, I spent approximately 22-ish on the X-Carve. A new Carve 1000 turnkey, well, almost turnkey, is right at 23.
Right.
Had I been more educated, and knowledge is power, and everybody knows that, I would have never bought the X-Carve.
Right, but the problem I'm saying is if you damage something on the CNC for newbies, you're down a week because of DHL shipping.
Yes, agreed there.
That's what I'm getting at.
I got you.
Whereas
Venables can ship pretty quick.
Well, they usually ship overnight and from Chicago. So they're Midwest. It's like 2 days everywhere.
They don't have to clear customs either.
Right. And that's one of the things that I want to try and get CNC for newbies taken care of with, is figuring out a way to expedite that so that we can get all of that stuff taken care of, financing and all that for the US customers, because I really think, I don't think that there's a better bang for your buck machine out there right now. And that's just me, and opinions are like assholes.
Everybody's got one.
Yep. And they all stink. So
I will say, based off my knowledge and what I have seen, the X-Carve versus the CNC for newbies machine, the CNC for newbies machine, if you bought turnkey, so to speak, minus the spindle and the waste board,
right,
it's much better built. It's much more rigid, and you don't have nowhere near the issues. Like, right. I don't see. I mean, look at the risers for the CNC for newbies machine. Look how thick they are compared to the X-Carve.
Right, half inch.
If you want to go to the X-Carve Pro, which still, from what I understand, nobody even has yet that's bought one.
That's bought one. They have.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's actually purchased one.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, okay, so they went to thicker risers, but I think they had that thing yesterday. They want $8,000 now.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
At $8,000, can't you get the 4896 from CNC for newbies?
With all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It would still be under $8,000.
Yeah, I think I priced it. Just, I had a wild hair moment, but my wife quickly shut that down.
No, the thing with the X-Carve is it's actually reinforced plate. And I'm not sure if they're casting them or if that's a like reinforced 3D print. I haven't drove into it that much yet. I did a show a while ago. I think it was like in the 30s episodes where we were looking at different machines, because CNC for Newbies came out, and you're like, okay, what do you have? What are you giving? And to me, it just, that was the better machine overall.
And I mean, I definitely agree with you. And based off just the products I have from them already, like, they're well built. They require minimal to no adjustment from what I've seen so far.
Right.
I mean, of course, you might have slight adjustments, but for the most part, they come spot on out the box.
I took my 4896 machine out to a customer and put it together, and I actually,
daughter, right?
What's that?
With your kid, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had to adjust the gear mesh because I was using two guys that had no idea how to put the gantry on the machine, so it was canted, and that's something I knew what to do because I already experienced it. And most guys don't realize, like, you still have to tune these machines. No matter what machine you get, you don't just open it up and go, okay, it's there. You have to actually tune it in to get what.
That's the same concept with a miter and a table. Like, you don't just pull out of the box and expect it to be square. You do. Right. I mean, most of the time they're fairly close, but you still have to check it, and you might have to make some adjustments.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that these guys lack in understanding is it's not an end all be all.
It really isn't. It's, again, another tool in my shop.
That, and I wish more people had an understanding like you, because it would give a lot better outcome, because I know a lot of guys that are like, nope, won't be using CNC. I'd rather carve it by hand, and I'm just like, hey, you do what you got to do.
So, I mean, expectation management is always key. You got to manage your expectations. If you're a brand new guy walking into this community, like, I was blind, I had no clue. And I went on a leap of faith. I put $3,000 almost out there to, hey, guess what? I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
But as long as you're receptive and you can understand that, you know what, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to break bits. It's not going to be perfect to start with.
I just had a customer in Colorado snapped a 1/4-inch bit on a Next Wave Shark HD 520. And he's like, that shouldn't happen. And we took a look at his settings and his wood, and it turns out I set up his V-carve. I set up a 1/4-inch rougher, and that was that Last Supper carve.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I set up his 1/4-inch rougher for poplar it was running at like 150 inches a minute.
Okay,
for rougher. He was running at 150 inches a minute, 3/8 depth of cut in zebra wood.
Yeah, no wonder it broke.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. And he's like, why not? I did it the other time. And I'm like, it's those expectations and not understanding. You have to set a tool up. It may be the same exact tool, but you have to set a tool up for
your materials,
and these guys just
use the search button.
Yeah. That's great. But Haas is on, man, that guy's coming up quick too. Got a 48 CNC for Newbies, but it's managing those expectations and understanding, like, if you don't know, I think the problem is they don't know that they don't know. That right there is the problem. Like,
or they won't admit that they don't know.
Or they won't admit it. Like,
People's not get them in trouble.
hey, how many times do you hear me on my live showing these guys? And whenever I put the CNC for noobs, I literally, you guys were seeing the switch flipped at the same time I was. Like, I had no idea if sparks were going to fly. The very first live where I turned it on, one motor was wired backwards because I wired it like I wired the X-Carve, not realizing like, oh shit, it's already taken care of in the
parallel.
And I wired it backwards. And the very first live, I'm like, okay, we're going to use it. Everything's going right until I get to the Y-axis. And all of a sudden you see the gantry can't like that and hear.
Right. Another point you just made, a lot of guys, they buy it and it doesn't work right. Start off and they're like, I'll go back and in my hand. Well, I'll put that in a different perspective. To make a 36 by, let's say, 24 cabinet door, right, by hand, if I made a raised panel door, one, I'd have to do that on a router table. No ifs, ands, or buts. But if you take, and in my case, I do hardwoods.
Yep.
So you take the lumber, you got to join it, you got to plane it, which realistically and truly, you don't have to do that if you put on a CNC machine. Just make the machine do it all.
Right.
However, so you have to do all that first. Then you have to set your router table for your rail or style bits. You got to make sure all your depths are correct. Then you got to run it and then check your speed on your router. Mm-hmm. Then you have to assemble it, glue up, nails, whatever you got to use. Most people use glue. But that takes a whole lot more time for a cabinet door than realistically me putting the correct end mill inside the CNC machine or inside the router, or in this case, my brand new spindle. Yay, I can spend half-inch bits now. But now I can take those half-inch bits or half-inch shank bits, put them in the spindle. It already has the pattern set, so I don't even have to worry about anything. And I carve, 4 vectors? And it's,
right.
I mean, I'm looking at approximately 36 minutes a door versus a couple hours a door before.
Right.
It saves you a lot of time, but you have to understand how you set it up.
You have to understand where your time savings is coming from, because you still have time in designing the part. But you know exactly what's going to happen, or you should have a very good idea of what's going to happen when you start.
I mean, if you're not using the preview function in Vectric, something's wrong.
Right.
That will definitely tell you, because I've seen a lot of guys post, oh, well, the machine did this. No, the machine did not do that. The machine did exactly what you told it to do.
Exactly.
I think you told me that a couple of times when I made that comment. I was like, no, you told it to do it. And
yep.
Absolutely. Yes,
or
I
you
did.
didn't tell it to do it. You wanted it to do something and you didn't tell it to. You didn't give it the command.
And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. A lot of guys don't want to admit that.
Yeah. That I didn't do it. Yeah, you did. Take responsibility. You absolutely did. You know, I'm a firm believer. Everybody thinks that I magically popped in here and I was like, I know everything. And I'm like, no, do you know how many thousands? No, I take that back. You're probably talking between all the machines that I've owned and breaking stuff, I've probably broken hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff. Ask my wife. She got the bill for it.
At the end of the day, mistakes are how you learn.
Right. And that's where I finally came up with, you know, if I put in there a missed dot and I do a 250 inch depth of cut on a 1/4 inch end mill in steel, guess what? First off, the end mill is going to break. Second off, the head's going to drive down into the material. You know, I'm going to burn up motors. It just, shit goes wrong.
I mean, even on a perfect day, let's say that you have everything set up correctly. You have everything programmed correctly.
Right.
It is still a machine. And
right.
There is the off chance that shit could still go wrong.
Right.
That's why we have e-stop buttons and kill switches and everything else.
You got that right.
It's even the same thing when I'm building stuff by hand. Like, there's always a chance that you can make a mistake.
Yes. And people just need to realize, like, just because you have a machine does not mean it's the end all be all.
Oh no.
It does not mean that there's not going to be an issue. You know, you have this. Deal with it. Find a way around it. Find what works and go from there.
And if you don't like what works, then figure out a way to make it better.
Right. You
That's
know,
one thing about this community, like, how would I say this? The ingenuity of just your average Joe is some of the stuff that they're posting up and making, like the new imp controller or the mini imp. I seen that on the forum, last night?
the pendant.
Yeah, the pendant thing. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is legitimately awesome, because the way my machine is set up and my space area, my computer is completely on the opposite side from my machine. So when I got to make adjustments, I got to come all the way back around here to do that.
Right.
As soon as I figure out which exact G-code sender I'm going to be the most happiest with, I plan on getting one of those things, just so I can say, cool.
That actually goes with all of the major ones, including UGS, PickSender.
Okay, so educate me then. Again, here's me not knowing something. Based off what I read, it's the imp pendant is what it is, but each one, depending on, you have to pick out which system you're going to use it on, correct?
Yes. So what it does is each sender takes keyboard controls differently. They process them differently. So you either have an emulator or you actually have a USB replicator or something of that nature.
Yeah,
So
I understand that.
you have to figure out which one is your actual mode of interaction.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, you've been pushing PickSender like since the day I met you.
Right.
I mean, I
think
purchased PickSender. I have it, and I'm learning it. So I think that's going to be the one that I tend to stick with, mostly because I got 24/7, well, not necessarily 24/7 tech support, but I do got tech support, right? Usually a phone call away.
Right. I push PickSender because I got on board when it was still in version 1 series. And it just so happened, I was doing 3D carves and I was using UGS. I never used easel. From the day I got my X-Carve, I've never used easel to run my X-Carve.
I used it as a sender for a while.
Right. And most guys did. Most guys start out designing and sending with easel. I came into the X-Carve already having softwares, and I didn't want to get away. We had a little bit of a delay there.
Yeah, I was gonna say something.
My connection's being used up a lot, so I think the local kids that are doing online learning are using it with. But anyways, I never went that route with it. So I automatically went to UGS. And then in my 3D carves, I was using a lot more cache memory or baud memory, and that was not working for me. I didn't want to split up my code. So basically I went to PickSender and I never looked back.
I mean, there's guys out there that swear by UGS. There's guys out there that swear by PickSender. And again, the reason I think I'm going to stick with PickSender is only because that's what I started learning outside of easel.
Right.
And UGS just became something I'm even remotely looking at, just because I see other guys using it. But so here's where I look at. Anytime I spend money on any tool that I have in my shop, there has to be return on investment.
Right.
And if I put the money into that program so my wife don't kill me, I got to use it anyway.
Right.
Let's be honest about that.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the PickSender version of that little pendant, because that thing is awesome.
Yeah. I tend to now. I just did the version 3.6 upgrade in PickSender. Like I was still on version 3.1 or 3.2 up to last week. So I just upgraded, and there's a couple little quirks that I got to work out that are different from what I did before. But I also screwed myself because I started using a endurance laser to try and learn their laser driver, and I'm like, okay, that's different than the JTech, so there's a learning curve there. Plus, I upgraded Pixender at the same time, and I tell everybody don't do that, and I went and did it, and now I fail. Like, okay, is this not turning on because the laser, or I'm not doing something in Pixender? Did I not stand on my head, turn it left, and shake my right leg, and that's how you have to turn it on? Or did I just not click something in Pixender correctly?
That's what I'm learning, all the different buttons in Pixender, because I will say, and that's the one thing I give Easel, they made it super simple just to send the code.
Right.
But with the internet connections being what they are as of lately, not having stable connections, and ultimately, my end goal, I'm going to end up somewhere where the internet doesn't really work that well to start with.
Exactly.
So I have to learn all the years.
It's not like you're sitting there, where you end up, you're not going to be able to go down the road to Walmart and be like, okay, I need this part.
Yeah, no. So I have to learn with I wouldn't necessarily say unstable, but unreliable internet as much as it is there.
Right.
I can't rely on a internet dependent center.
Right.
And then that's just the way it goes.
Agree.
I mean, hell, here recently, like with the COVID thing and as much bandwidth that's been eaten up by all the children going to school, which they got to go to school.
Yeah.
I mean, I experience connectivity issues all the time now. It just is what it is.
You're not telling me anything, man.
I mean, you just lagged. We know. We got it.
So I work from home. My wife is working from home. My daughter is on distance learning. And then on top of it, the neighbors in front, left diagonal, and left diagonal are all on bandwidth. So, and they're doing, now it's not every day, but today is one of the days where everybody's home learning.
I mean, it is what it is.
So you gotta learn how to use something that doesn't have an internet connection.
Again, obstacles and overcoming them.
Yep.
I'm again stepping outside of my comfort zone with Easel as far as my sender. Screw Easel for design, but
right.
Stepping outside my comfort zone, I have to learn it. So guess what? You just got to do it.
And you move forward.
That's learning happens. That's progress.
And that's one of the things that a lot of people, they lack the patience in this world of, I want it now. Last night, a prime example, you wanted your spindle running now, but you had the patience to sit there and go, okay, why is it not running? It's not running. It's a hunk of shit. You went, what did I do wrong? What did I program wrong?
Oh, I had no choice because it's one of those things. It's sitting here right now. I'm not fixing to let $400 and some odd between the VFD and the spindle, not counting the cable cost.
Right.
Stop me from using something. It's like, okay, I know I did something somewhere.
Right.
It's very rare that you find something that's dead on arrival out of a box.
Right.
It does happen from time to time, but 90% of the time is something that you did.
Thank you. That right there. I mean, at the end of the day, that sums it up is what did you do?
Yeah. Because again, every so often you will find something that does not work brand new. And that does happen from time to time. While it's rare, it does happen.
Absolutely. You know,
if you don't read the instructions, if you don't hook it up correctly, like Bob Canning all the time, wiring. Again, mine wasn't necessarily wiring, particularly wire, but it was still a wiring setup that was wrong.
right. And it's just one of those things that these guys, you know, a lot of them, once they realize that, and they flourish. Like, and I can't explain it, but there are so many people out there. I don't know why my name took off like it did in the groups. I'm not quite sure, because usually the stuff that I see, these guys are doing shit heads and tails above what I'm doing. I'm typically producing educational stuff. These guys, you guys are carving like cabrio legs and rotary 3D carves and picture frames of Victorian era, you know, and just shit like that. And it blows my mind. And I'm like, man, I wish I could do that. You know, these guys flourish once they understand that concept of, okay, where did I go wrong? What do I got to do?
I mean, that's just the way it goes. I would say, I think where you took off a lot, and this is just a personal opinion, you do take a lot of time and sit there and discuss things with people, and you give them a little bit so they grasp the total concept. But from what I understand, you were a college professor or something prior to this, wasn't you? Or you're a teacher?
Yeah, I had a brief career as an educator.
So when I became a flight instructor, you have to learn the adult learning process, and I'm
Right.
sure you're intimately familiar with it.
Right.
And one thing that makes people adults learn is you don't give them everything. You got to give them enough to the point where they start catching on and figure it out for themselves.
Dre was talking about that. He was like, you know, you give me enough and you walk me through it enough that I have a grasp on it. And then, like with tramming, if you want to know about tramming, ask Dre King.
Oh yeah, he's got it down. Dre is killing it with that.
I walked him through it. It took like 2 or 3 times. And I'm talking like hour-long video conversations out at the machine. No, don't do that. Put the corner here. Put the card here. Lift it up. Do I have to use a specific kind of glass? Da. We did it. And then like a week later, he calls me and he's like, yeah, I've trammed my machine like 20 times. Like, take it apart and tram it. And I was like, why? And he goes, I want to know how to do it. And now it takes him minutes to tram a machine.
It's what we call in the military. It's a battle drill to him now. He's got it. And I'm not gonna lie. So you went through all that with him, and then I finally broke down. I was like, you know what? That's probably what's wrong with mine. So he went through it with me. Same thing. Now I can do it in like 10 minutes. I'm like, done. No problem.
Yeah. And but that's the thing, is he took it and he went with it straight in and was like, I'm going to be the best at this section. And now he's taking it from, okay, I'm going to be the best at tramming because I already know it, to I'm going to be the best at setting this job up.
I mean, Dre's doing really good things out there in Colorado. Like his flags are, I will tell you right now, being in Lower Alabama, I see a lot of flags. Nobody down here does what he does. Right. I mean, he's up and coming, I'm telling you.
Oh, absolutely. His floating plaque flags, you know, we've talked about that. He kind of reached on something that a lot of guys weren't doing. And now you're starting to see him pop up because obviously it's hot and it's selling, and, you know, people are going to copy it. Oh, yeah. But all in all, he's touched on something that you're like, oh, wow, okay. You know, this is a new take on it. And that's what makes him different.
Oh, yeah. And he definitely has some ideas. He calls me all the time for the furniture side of the house. I will tell you, like, when he first started in Vectric, I'm sure he hit you up. He hit me up a lot. But now there's times when like I'm messing in Vectric. I'm like, hey, how do I do this again? Because he plays with it that much. He messes with it that much.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, I asked him, I was like, yo, how are you doing your floating flags? Like, I want to know if I'm on the right path, because this is how I did them. Are you doing them the same way? And he's telling me how he did it. And I was like, oh, you can upgrade that by doing this with the CNC. And you can now do this. And he's like, yeah. And we talked it through, and like, he's walking me through what he's doing and educating me. And I'm taking what he's given me and I'm like, okay, this is my knowledge. Put it all in a blender. And now you got something that, like, I'm working on a flag where I 3D carved the military rank. It was a machinist second mate rank. I created it in Vectric, made a 3D carve out of wood, put it in green sand, and cast it in aluminum. And I'm actually going to float that on the flag.
Nice.
You know, so it's taking his floating plaque idea, the 3D carved plaque idea, and then adding metal to it.
Yeah, mixing it all up.
And you're just like, oh, wow, I didn't realize this much stuff could be put in one flag.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
you know,
again, he has broke the market out on that one. And it's very good for him. Honestly.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I feel like, you know, he had a situation where he had to pull out of the one shop.
Yeah.
You know, and the reason why that happened was because he's breaking new ground and people wanted to take credit for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, by all means. And me and him had a lot of conversations over that. And I think his best move is what he did. He's independent now. And, I mean, he's doing good stuff.
Sexual Chocolate says thank you.
You're welcome, girl. Is this a non-smoking broadcast? Because I really need to see that.
Go for it. You could drink, you could smoke. If you gotta. Well, you can't. But if
I can't do that.
If my guests have a water aperture, they can do it. Right up in the right hand corner here, it says parental advisory, explicit.
So now educate me on something.
Okay.
We were discussing my whole VFD cable setup, and I hit up Jerome DeFrank, and he was out of it yesterday because he had some dental work done. I was curious how he was setting his cable up versus what you were talking about, how like you would recommend what I do with my VFD cable.
Right. Separation and 2 drag chains.
So sometimes I'm a visual person, sometimes I'm a technical person. In this case, I think I kind of need a little bit of both, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because I understand the drag chain running it through, but when you're talking about adding a secondary drag chain, that kind of like, I've seen CNCs out there with those, but those are a lot bigger than the new carve, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious of what we're going to come up with there.
So what I do for mine, like whenever I'm initially setting up, you guys saw my 4896 machine. On the back side of that, I ran my power cords and any high voltage that could interfere. I ran outside of the drag chain that was provided. Yeah. I run a zip tie transversely, and then I run a zip tie through that transverse one longitudinally of the machine.
Yeah.
And that acts as a drag chain to curl the wires as the gantry moves forward and back and left and right. And then once I have all my wiring set and I know how I want to do it, I'll actually run a whole second drag chain behind the first one. Okay. So I'll run them parallel and I'll just make an extra brace out.
Yeah.
And then from there, it will allow the cupping just like the regular low voltage signals to move, and it separates everything out.
So while you were talking about that, I had a thought because I tend to overthink shit a lot.
Mhm.
But so I'm running a 110 input and a 110 output to my spindle. It's supposed to be 3 phases. Is that going to create, and I guess this is a good question for if anybody ever thinks about it, is that going to create the same EMI as a 223 phase system?
EMI is EMI. You're going to get EMI from any high level electric.
Okay.
The higher the
aircraft wires, everything's shielded on an aircraft wire.
Right.
There's no ifs, ands, and buts there.
Right. And you guys have 48 volt systems, and you have 220 volt systems, and you have all these
kinds of electricity mixed together.
Right. So that's why everything is shielded, because everything is putting off different EMI from different frequencies.
Gotcha.
Or different, hertz is frequencies. Yeah.
So bleed over.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's it, is bleed over. Whenever I first put a X-Carve together at my second big shop, at the second bigger shop, I actually got an RF EMI meter.
Okay.
And I actually showed the guys where the DeWalt 611 is emitting the most EMI. And it's right at the top where the brushes are, and it radiates through the openings, and it actually radiates at like a 45-degree angle out.
I could understand that.
Right? So because it's at a 45-degree angle out, it creates a bigger bubble, and you can get more EMI that way. A simple fix for that was putting aluminum foil around the actual router and focusing the EMI up.
Straight up.
And once you did that, you didn't have any EMI around the wires. But if you went on top of the router, it actually had EMI coming out of the top of it.
Yeah, you just deflected it up.
Right. And then by the time it would come down, it's already dispersed through atmosphere and everything. There's a lot to be said about that stuff that I don't know the technicalities. I know how to get around it because of backyard ingenuity.
Redneck ingenuity.
What
we call it down here.
Yep. Aluminum foil over the top of the router. Well, what's that going to do? It's going to heat it up more. The DeWalt 611 is one of the shittiest routers, I feel. Their design for that is just horrible. They go through brushes. They create a lot of RF noise. I hate that router.
Let's be realistic. Like, it's a trim router. I don't think they won't design it to be strapped to a CNC machine.
And that's something to keep in mind, but I don't understand why these companies are pushing that 611. And now that the 611 is kind of back ordered everywhere, people are going, oh, the Makita, oh, the Bosch, oh, this one is
the same concept though.
It is the same concept. I just had one of my students asking for ecopoxy. But you can get a much better design or drained Makita trim router.
Oh, I'm sure.
If you do the same RF test with the router, there's barely any EMI coming out. So I don't know if they're running a drain off their speed controller or what they're doing.
I will tell you that in the delay that CNC for Newbies had with the new carve, I looked at a lot of different options, and with the 611 being back order, because I sold my X carve. I as I started demodifying and putting the original X-Car parts back on, I got to the point where I was like, this is just going to create me more headaches that I'm going to have to spend more money on to fix. So I ended up selling it off. In the interim, I was like, cool, I got to have a router, because all of my routers are the big honking ones meant for cutting like cabinet doors and stuff like that on the router table.
Right.
Well, I did buy the Makita, and what I will tell you, it is a lot quieter piece of equipment. As I thought about it more and more, I was like, I probably should do the proper thing and just go to a straight up spindle. Because me and you were talking about this whole thing, and you were helping me get my thought process together. Because if you remember, I was here, I was there, I was here, I was there. I originally said I wasn't going to do the spindle auction yet.
Right. You wanted to wait and save money. And
yeah, the more I thought about it, if I've put this much effort forth to do it properly, I might as well go to the spindle.
Yep.
And ultimately, even like the Corvette guy that you told me to follow his spindle cable, because I'm not going to lie, I was going to redneck the hell out of some shit. I was going to put an extension cord there and call it good. But that guy broke it down talking about the shielding and the EMI and this, that, and the other thing, and it made more sense to do it properly.
Right.
I mean, I watched a lot of his videos on like the different, like he goes and reviews other people's videos and sees how they make their cords or whatever. And he brings up a lot of valid points. Me being an aircraft mechanic and electrician, like what he talks about, you would never think would come from these machines, but I know it comes from aircraft all the time.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, it's like, all right, cool. Instead of doing it the way I was originally going to do it, let me spend the money. And a lot of people don't like that statement, spend money, but sometimes you have to do that in order for the machines to work properly.
I always tell people, if you think you're going to spend $50, plan on $100.
Oh yeah.
Not trying to be a dick about it, but that's what it is. You know, you got to spend money to make money.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you do something cheaply to start with, more times than not, it will fail, and then you will just spend more money fixing said problems.
Yep. You know, it's one of those things. Completely not CNC related. I've been doing screen prints for replica gauges for like Piper Cubs and stuff. And I had no idea that this was a huge market. And Jerome's on.
Yeah, what's up, Jerome?
But I had no idea that this was a huge market. But they use small wooden frames. And because I use large metal frames, I have a different spreader that I spread the emulsion on with. So I tried using that one. First off, I tried spreading it by hand, and that was a horrible idea. And then I tried using my other one, and that was a worse idea. And then I tried taping it, and that didn't work. And finally, I broke down, and I spent the $8 to do it. And I was like, why didn't I do this in the beginning?
Right.
Like quit trying to jump around it. The time that I spent cleaning up screens and cleaning up spilled emulsion and wasted emulsion and everything like that, spend the $8, wait 2 days. It's to me. I've got it. Now I'm coating screens by the 50s and exposing them. And I get $40 for those screens.
There you go.
It cost me nothing to make them. It's just an added value.
All right, Chris, I got to let you go, brother. I got to hop on.
Man.
I have work actually calling. So,
hey, be safe. Have a good one. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no worries. Y'all stay safe.
Later, man. All right, guys. That was Dan. He's active duty, so he's got to get his stuff going and go from there. I think he's probably getting ready to go out flying today. But you know, you guys take a look at him. It's Dan Francis on Facebook, and he does some great work, some great stuff. I really appreciate it whenever I have people on talking about what they do, how they do it, and bringing up great topics that I wouldn't normally think of. You know, I wanted to do a fonts show today. We talked about like creating fonts. I was going to do a show on how to get fonts. And I'll give you guys just a quick overview. Do a Google search. You know, I just bought for $39. I bought 150 fonts that are tattoo style fonts. You know, I wanted that Chicano style font work, and I wanted some of the added extras that they do, you know, for some designs that I'm going to be working on. But I wanted to have something like that. And rather than me creating the whole font, I went out for $39. I bought 150 of them. The whole time I'm on this show, I was adding them to my font package. And now whenever I go to VCarve, I can pull those fonts in and actually utilize those, and go from there. So to me, that's such a better value than the creating a vector file from them, when I can create a vector file from this and utilize it anytime, you know. Plus I can use this across some of my raster programs like paint.net and stuff like that. So just something to think about and go from there. Okay, guys. We'll delve into fonts a little bit deeper another day, but it's 10 o'clock. I've got 10 pounds of powder coat here waiting to be sprayed on some exercise equipment. I'm going to try and get that done before I fall flat on my face and call it a day. So you guys have a good one, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Later.